Happy New Year, World Wide Web. I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality with the best resolutions. Such as actually getting these reviews out in a timely fashion. Yep. Which brings us to RoboCop 3, released just 3 years after RoboCop 2, even though it's technically finished in 2, despite a shoestring budget. Problem was, Orion kinda sorta went under, meaning the release had to be pushed back a tad. And then it was gonna be released in the summer of '93, but that would have had it going up against a little thing called Jurassic Park, so, November? November sound good to everybody? November. As you might expect by now, RoboCop 3 continues the story of the RoboCop universe. Set 5 years since the events of RoboCop 2, now OCP has been bought by an even bigger corporation! And they still haven't finished building fucking Delta City yet, so they opt for even more aggressive tactics to clear the area for construction. So aggressive, in fact, RoboCop now faces a dilemma. Follow his orders, or do the right thing! You know, the dilemma he faced and solved in the last 2 movies consecutively. So, let's take a look at RoboCop 3 and see if RoboCop 2 wasn't enough to shelve the series, what was? After a cutting-edge CGI opening showing us the shining jewel of the future, Delta City, estimated release date around the same time the Final Fantasy VII remake comes out, we zip right over to the news to get our fill of important plot changes since the last movie.
The Omni Consumer Products Corporation ended months of speculation today by announcing its takeover by the multinational Kanamitsu Corporation.
These things happen in the world of business, but something about this one, I don't know, it feels kind of like if you find out Electronic Arts was bought by Sony. But then we're in the real world, so we have to figure out the important characters on our own. My money's on the little girl doing arithmocalculometry on her personal supercomputer. The TV keeps going, though, pointing out that the crime in Detroit is still really, really bad, because it's hard to have a RoboCop movie if everything's hunky-dory. Don't worry, though. OCP, who already own the police, decide to bring a new police force on top of it. Urban Rehabilitation, staffed by former soldiers, so you know they're gonna rehabilitate the fuck out of Detroit. Also, they're being led by Paul McDaggett, played by John Castle.
I won't deny we're serving an eviction notice or 2, but most of these people have already taken their urine tests and placement exams. They've got new jobs waiting for them.
The stormtroopers and forcefully evicting people who conscript them into slavery is one thing, but, I mean, all you really needed to hear to know this guy was a bad guy was the British accent. No more time for TV, though. Important little girl, Nico, played by Remy Ryan, has to go to bed. Her father, played by John Posey, tries to alleviate the kids' concerns about the crime wave and war zone and rampant evictions being issued across the neighborhood.
You're safe here.
But even that can't protect his daughter from the terrifying power of Miley Cyrus. But he can take her and her mother, played by Jodie Long, and get the fuck out of there! Which they evidently were already supposed to do. Long ago. Was their plan really just to pretend like everything was okay? Welcome to reality, motherfuckers. Rehab has arrived, doing what they do best. Talking down to old ladies in close-ups while acting mean but not really doing anything in the background. Bertha, however, played by Carol Christine Hilaria Pounder, shows up and calls them Nazis. British, my lady. The Crown has produced far more villains in film than the Reich could ever dream to. However, she's not just any homeless lady. Pounder here is part of a ragtag group of the raggiest and taggiest homeless freedom fighters in Detroit. They may not have a place to live, but by God they have motherfucking IEDs, which blow the demolition equipment the fuck up, spoiling OCP's plans for the night. Except they're kidnapping everyone to put them in forced labor camps, I guess. That goes off without a hitch. Except somehow in the middle of that, while they clearly had little Nico in that scene, somehow they forgot that along the way, leaving her to wander the old destroyed neighborhood all alone. Or not.
You!
Yes, you're evil. It's obvious, it's not subtle, and it does not need to be established 6 times in a row. Either kidnap the kid or don't. They try to give chase, but Nico can't be found, for she has disappeared into a windowless van. Not to worry, this is the Resistance, the good guys. So good, in fact, they save the little girl from the OCP stormtroopers. Only to bring her along for a very, very dangerous mission to break into a police armory and steal even more supplies. After all, handy-dandy timed explosive devices don't grow on trees.
Whoa! Jeez!
It's 209!
He wasn't in the recon photos!
Hey man, the robot only had a cameo in the last movie. Let him have his scene. You already know how this goes anyway. Ed 209 identifies the Resistance as criminals and gives them a few seconds before it kills them, which just so happens to be long enough for Nico to hack it and reprogram the damn thing.
I am now authorized to be loyal as a puppy.
Have you ever had puppies? They don't know when to stop in play biting and they shit all over the place. If I were you, I'd get the hell out of there. How do they intend to get into the armory, though? Simple! A handy-dandy keycard looted from a dead police officer, which obviously doesn't open the door and instead sets off alarms. Not to worry, Super Kid can use Ed 209 to blow the door open, allowing them to get in and steal all the small arms. Shit, why not just take Ed 209 and leave? Well, there is other stuff that they find.
Get that.
I feel like that is going to come in very handy during Act 3. They took so long looting, though, the police have arrived. Not to worry, Ed 209's still on their side. You might think this means the bot will be part of the Resistance's repertoire going forward, but I got a couple of guns and the Act 3 quest item. Who needs the giant military-grade robotic killing machine? So they leave it behind and we never see it again for the rest of the movie. However, we do see someone else come in, as one of the police officers has to chase down that yellow van. Yes, Ann Lewis, still played by Nancy Allen. I don't know why they had that long, awkward face reveal. I mean, you ask a cop to respond to this crime in the RoboCop series, I figure it's gonna be her. This allows us to further establish how good and just our freedom-fighting heroes are, as they hack the streetlights, causing several innocent people to wind up in terrible accidents, resulting in the thrashing and near-death of a beloved character. Really working hard to get on the good side here. However, while they lost Lewis, it seems another cop has joined the chase. Well, I kind of figured if someone came in after the regular police officers were defeated, it would probably be RoboCop, but sure, just spoil that too. I mean, fuck it, we already let go of subtlety in the last movie. There is a slight problem, though. While Lewis survived the accident, it seems they just so happen to find themselves in Splatterpunk's territory. Thus, while RoboCop could apprehend the Resistance, movie will be over too quick that way, so he turns the fuck around. Still plenty of time to go before they kill Lewis, so he decides not to go directly there, but set up an awesome entrance, crashing through the roof of a parking garage. He slams down below, then shoots out the roof of his own car, because doors are for pussies. Now it's time to show off his brand spanking new Mega Buster! Way to go, Murphy. That'll show him. Now we just have to figure out how we're going to explain all the property damage and the destruction of a police vehicle. Again, that's our introduction to RoboCop, who, quite obviously, is not played by Peter Weller this time around.
I'm still scanning 3. Make that 2.
It's kind of impressive when all we see of the actor is his mouth, and that's still enough to know that something is drastically different here. And again, his voice sounds absolutely nothing like it did in the last two movies. Anyway, RoboCop 3 is played by Robert Burke, who clearly doesn't look like Peter Weller, but the filmmakers figured out a way to hand-wave away that discrepancy. Facial reconstruction after suffering terrible burns! Instead of, just leaving the helmet on all movie. Don't really see what's wrong with that, especially considering we already saw him with the helmet on before this, and he already looked very different. But the point is, we established these important characters, the fact that OCP is still evil Nazi bastards, and real quick, let's make sure Murphy sees the little girl and the hideout the Resistance is using before moving on to OCP itself. Kanemitsu, played by our old wizard friend Mako, is not happy with OCP's failure to get much headway in the Delta City project. Also, the old man is gone now, replaced by CEO Rip Torn, who is also not happy about Delta City's progress.
The great city of Detroit represents an important precedent, gentlemen. There's only one small problem. It's turning into a war zone!
Turning? We're 3 movies in. At least 6 years have passed in this timeline, all of which involve Detroit being a crime-ridden hellhole. I know you weren't here for the last 2 movies, but didn't you at least get briefed? The current crisis the company is facing is, of course, due to the fact that they've scheduled a construction to begin with a ridiculous deadline.
If Cadillac Heights isn't cleared for demolition by Friday midnight, our loans will be called in. OCP will be ruined.
Jesus fuck, you'd think a company would learn to stop putting all their eggs in one basket after a while. Rip Torn basically tells them to get their asses in gear, but Kanemitsu has his own plan. Send someone of his own down there to take care of things their way. Naked, sexy, and driving on the left side of the road. That's still gonna take a while to get here though, so we have plenty of time to watch RoboCop get fixed up by Dr. Lazarus, played by Jill Hennessy. She's pretty much the top scientist on RoboCop research and maintenance at this point, and when she says his disobeying a direct order was a result of his human components making a judgment call, OCP says then what they have to do is simply destroy his remaining humanity! Again!
We could cut out the appropriate circuits by implanting a micro-neuro barrier.
Do you walk around with a micro-neuro barrier in your pocket, just in case? As they have it conveniently on hand, Lazarus is tasked with wiping his humanity once and for all. No judgment calls, no empathy, and for the love of God, stop RoboCop from sneaking into the back room with an issue of Popular Mechanics. That's just creepy. With that, RoboCop is on the case. Seeing where the church is that the Resistance must be hiding out in, he heads out at once. But Lewis is a bit concerned and decides to tail him.
Hey, Lewis, you want your body armor? What? No, I'm off duty.
Hey everyone! You think she might get shot today? She's more concerned with RoboCop's humanity, though.
Robo, are you okay?
I'm fine. And call me Murphy.
He's fine. It's not like fucking with RoboCop's head was the most fun part of the last movie or anything. Confirming things are okay, and she is still off duty, Lewis tags along with Murphy anyway. That way, when they find the Resistance, it consisting of poor, defenseless, well-armed homeless people, Murphy can run into a conflict as the rehab stormtroopers have arrived to take them out. Also, for some fucking reason, he has his Prime Directive still in place, even though we clearly saw them get wiped in the last movie. They have a scene to explain his new face, but fuck all explanation for that one. Oh well, let's just make it even more confusing by having RoboCop side with the criminals anyway, and aim his gun at the rehab bastards!
If you want to get in there, you're gonna have to shoot through us.
I don't have a huge problem with that.
It's not surprising. Want to surprise me? Have RoboCop join in and shoot her too. Okay then. Oh, no, he just points his gun at people when he wants to see or talk to them. Kinda like in CSGO. But he still can't shoot at OCP employees because plot. However, he can still shoot their cars, and get shot by them. That last part not being quite as awesome, I guess. Well, the Resistance jumps in to defend the police officer, and it looks like they were far better equipped to deal with the rehab troops than Lewis and RoboCop combined. That means we have enough time for Murphy to set up a sad, poetic scene, laying Lewis down by the altar so he can hear her final pleas before she dies.
Get them for me. Promise me.
I promise.
Is it wrong that just reminds me of my fiancé telling me to pick up a few pints of ice cream on the way home? Now, well, point is, rehab is coming! So the Resistance barricade the place and stealthily sneak down into the sewers by way of a hidden trap door, meaning they can take the damaged RoboCop to the real hideout! Fucking great, they could have just been hiding down here and Lewis died for their sins. More importantly, we learn the tracking beacon RoboCop had since the first movie is just a simple little easily removed device that can then be used to set up a trap for the rehab goons.
They got a little too close to home that time.
Well, what do you expect? You threw the tracking device like 20 feet away. Kuntz, played by Stephen Root, is starting to break under pressure, but Zack, played by Stanley Anderson, gets him to stop being such a whiny little son of a bitch. After all, his day's not going nearly as bad as RoboCop's, now framed for the murder of Ann Lewis, which somehow means OCP knows Lazarus didn't put the chip in, and so she's in trouble too. Not as much as OCP themselves, though, as finally the sexy, naked Japanese man has arrived. Otomo, played by Bruce Locke.
As I was saying, Otomo-san, we have a warrant out for the arrest of RoboCop.
Yeah, he has been missing long enough. I suppose the guy really does need a refresher on the plot so far. Otomo doesn't respond to Rip Torn's claims that OCP will be able to handle this project on their own, and instead walks out of there to the sound of Japanese music. Johnson, though, still played by Felton Perry, figures in order to be able to pull this off without annoying their Japanese overlords, they would need to pack the rehab troops with even more people, police officers, at a minor pay raise, instead of the ridiculous prices mercenaries ask for. Defeating RoboCop might be unnecessary, though, as the Resistance mechanic, Moreno, played by Daniel Van Bargen, really can't do a damn thing to fix a broken RoboCop.
He is messed up. We don't have the equipment.
Well, who the hell does?
Okay, if the next scene is them wheeling him into a Pet Boys, I'm just gonna turn it off here. RoboCop himself spoils the mystery, telling them to find Dr. Lazarus. So they send forth the fucking kid. who for some reason can waltz right into the police station unnoticed, even slipping into the back to the presumably high-security RoboCop laboratory, finding no one there except for Dr. Lazarus, who looks like she just came back from breakfast. Or the Breakfast Club. Either way, Nico gets her to come along. But first, we have to be reminded that the Japanese play a role in this movie, as Otomo is surrounded by resistance fighters. You mean to tell me the last hour of the movie that you haven't been around for could have been that much more entertaining? Can't ninja your way out of everything, though, and Otomo gets whacked in the face with a pipe! But it turns out he's a robot too. Just like all technology, Japan is way ahead of America, thus killing the last of them. 8-Man here finds a path drawn on a clear piece of paper. Okay, back with the RoboCop movie, Dr. Lazarus has arrived, and has all they need to fix RoboCop up to be good as new. That being another weird first-person operation scene like the first two movies, but this time, they delete his 4th Prime Directive! Again. And then it's onto those weird-as-fuck Robo-acid trips you get when you mix memories with low-budget special effects from the early 90s. Okay, Robo, your ex-wife turning into your dead partner? Really fucked up. Let's never do that again, okay? Okay, that's even more fucked. Let's just stop with the 12 degrees of separation from your RoboCop, okay? With RoboCop mostly repaired and all the important characters together, it's time for exposition! Something between a clip show of RoboCop's past that we already saw, and the little extra bits of sadness, like the fact that Nico's mom and dad are confirmed dead as shit! Surely this will make us feel sorry for her and like the character, and stop asking why the hell every action movie made since Aliens thinks it needs to have a little kid to tag along with the other character that we actually want to see. Ah well, Roboto-san does his best to progress the plot, acquiring a map of Detroit that, when combined with the plastic sheet from earlier, is a map right to the Resistance's secret hideout. The third one, now that the church and sewer lairs are both abandoned. Also, that random shit they found during the opening heist? Well, it just so happens to be a jetpack upgrade for RoboCop. How convenient!
Nico, you see those resistors over there by the ratchet? Get them for me, will you? Get them for me, will you?
Except, of course, it's still over a half-hour of movie left. Just because he gets this thing in Act 3 doesn't mean it has to be in the first seconds of Act 3. Thus, remembering Lewis's pleas, he does not get the extremely helpful and almost installed jetpack installed, but instead marches forth on a quest to get that woman some ice cream. Go down to the precinct and destroy the ever-loving fuck out of the rehab wing in order to find out the location of the man who murdered Lewis, Mick Daggett. Seems he's hiding out in a seedy hotel, having a little chat with Kanemitsu with a real-time translation that makes it even harder to understand than if he were just speaking Japanese.
You have the device I sent you.
It hasn't come to that yet.
And the bad guys have their own secret Act 3 trick. A device in a case. We don't know what it is, but we can be sure it is pure evil, like a plague or a computer virus or dubstep. We find out the reason he's here is because he was tipped off RoboCop was coming by that traitorous bastard Kuntz. Of course, that only bought him a little time, as RoboCop has already arrived. But how fast will we be able to find him in this urban labyrinth?
Where is McDaggett?
Room 212.
Thank you.
Oh. Well, I guess not everything has to be overly complicated. It does get a bit hairy when the elevator door doesn't open all the way, but that won't stop RoboCop! However, his attempt to apprehend McDaggett does run into trouble when the man uses RoboCop's weakness of being unable to look at someone without pointing his gun at them to escape! And then, when he's in a high-speed chase between his armored van and RoboCop's pimpmobile, he utilizes the capitalist pig's evil powers of money to escape into the night. And give free money to tons of kids, so, I guess that's a wash on the good versus evil there. So McDaggett escaped RoboCop's wrath, but that doesn't mean Kuntz can't be a complete fucking idiot in his stead.
Why don't we just all have a seat and relax? It'll all be over in a few minutes.
Selling out the Resistance fighters to save himself, and then returning to the Resistance base and revealing that he's a turncoat so that he can surround himself with Resistance fighters that probably don't like him very much right now. And it's about to be by several very armed rehab goons that are going to be shooting everyone and probably won't care to check their fire around him. Fucking brilliant guy, this Kuntz. Especially considering Rehab just breaks right in, firing wildly in every direction for no apparent reason. Oh yeah, that's right, she did have a name. It's not as cool as CC Pounder, but yeah, you go, Bertha. Die. Lazarus barely manages to whisk Nico to an escape route before McDaggett shows up. And evidently, the gas masks are just for show. With Dr. Lazarus in his custody, and this band of the Resistance broken apart, all they have left to do, well, after confirming, yes, that dumbass turncoat was killed in the conflict he knowingly walked into, is for McDaggett to head down to the station and demand Sergeant Reed prepare his men to go kick some homeless ass to clear way for the demolition crew. Something he absolutely refuses to go through with, no matter their threats to his employment.
Well, you might think about your own family.
I am.
I think they'll be proud that I stood up for the right thing today, and we will stand together under a bridge, cold and hungry. In fact, it turns out the entire police force would rather lose their jobs, their pension, and any hope for the future whatsoever, rather than be the bad guys in this movie. That means McDaggett has to find a handy bunch of people around here who would like to be assholes to a bunch of innocent civilians.
How would you and your friends like to make some money, chum?
Now come on, McDaggett, I'm pretty sure he'd be fine getting paid in exposure. Then a random cartoon appears! This depicting Johnny Rehab killing the shit out of Ed, and Eddie in order to sell toys, before we see a news report about how that dastardly RoboCop just murdered a bunch of innocent nuns!
I'm sorry, I can't even read this.
Come on, this is bullshit. Are you buying this?
RoboCop?
Fucking hell, I guess it is possible to make RoboCop 2 look subtle. So OCP runs the media, but don't worry, that just so happens to be where Nico found herself through those oh-so-convenient vents. And through her magical hacking skills, she hacks the fucking electrical box, which reveals to her that Dr. Lazarus was also brought to this very building.
You lousy sons of bitches!
Nobody's listening to you, sweetheart.
Except for you? Well, there's like 15 minutes of movie left, so let's set up that climax real fast. First of all, the entire police force took the fucking cars after quitting. Not sure the legality of that, but fuck it! It was all to head down and defend the civilians from the evil forces of their bosses. Guess if OCP did use the police instead of Rehab, it would have been even more confusing. Kinda like how RoboCop now just remembers he's in this movie too, rematerializing at the Rebel base, only to find that the high-tech Japanese robo-hitman is also still in this movie. And he found out where the Rebel base was through the map that he had acquired in several parts. Which kinda makes Kuntz squealing on the Rebels pointless, but... And there's nothing saying that good guys have to be particularly good at keeping secrets. So while Reed and the remaining Resistance do their best to resist Rehab and the Raiders with rocket launchers, RoboCop has, a confrontation? Allegedly, the intention was they wanted to bring some badass martial arts to the cyborg combat, but the choreography is a bit, lacking. Meaning, instead of feeling pumped for the fight, I'm just waiting for RoboCop to end this. Well, that was easier than expected. Now I'm just wondering why the hell the lead pipe didn't work earlier. Also, the street war continues unabated, which, as it turns out, OCP actually isn't a fan of.
I'm still in charge here. I'm pulling the plug.
Sit down.
What, you going war wacky?
I keep telling you, I have the British accent. I'm the bad guy here! 10 minutes to go, so you better hurry the fuck up now. Nico manages to hack the security cams and the broadcast from within the vent, getting Lazarus some airtime to mention, you know what? The bad guys in this movie are actually bad guys! Also, she might have mentioned in an earlier scene that the RoboCop jetpack happened to have an auxiliary power supply. Kind of important now that the fight left RoboCop weak and barely able to move, but still able to reach that handy-dandy jetpack so that he may quite literally swoop in to save the day! In PG-13 land, explosions and gunfire, but people only die from overacting. On that note, McDaggett is pissed.
All right, Mr. RoboCop.
Come and get me.
And he still has that super important, super secret device in this case, ready to unleash upon the world the evil powers of ASMR. In short order, probably because he has a fucking jetpack, RoboCop arrives to finally avenge Lewis and take McDaggett down. Jesus, Robo, stop doing that! Yeah, the thing looks a bit bulky, but it's got an auxiliary power supply, it lets you fly, and so far, no downside has actually been shown to its use. Why do you keep taking it off at a whim? You just got to put it back on in the nick of time anyway! But before he can, there is someone else RoboCop has to contend with. That's who you remind me of. An evil Ryan Higa. And this time, headshots merely leave the bot slightly damaged with a stupid smile frozen on its face. That way they can bring in the actor again to play the third cyborg ninja and fight RoboCop, just as poorly as he did the first time. Well then, this looks like a job for Nico Ex Machina. I mean, she could have just had them go after McDaggett instead, but yeah, you remember Ed 209? Yeah, strategy's not really her strong suit. Even worse!
Those androids are programmed with a thermal failsafe device.
They're rigged to self-destruct.
Quick question there, Mr. British Bad Guy. A couple. Number one, why didn't the cyborg ninja that was destroyed earlier self-destruct? And number two, that's what the fucking case is? A countdown for the entirely separate and presumably self-contained self-destruct mechanism? Well, what's the fucking point of it even existing then? Well, when RoboCop rolls over to his jetpack just in the nick of time and flies out of there with the important characters, McDaggett has something to crawl towards and reach for, as if turning it off is supposed to do anything, and therefore, happy ending! McDaggett is killed, and Kanemitsu is pissed. The Delta City project has proven to be a massive waste of money. Rip Torn is fired on the spot, and he respectively bows to the cyborg that royally fucked everything up for him. Well, given the choice between that and being beaten to a bloody pulp by the Resistance, I guess. Anyway, that was RoboCop 3. And it really feels like RoboCop. Fanfiction. Low-grade RoboCop fanfiction. Between attempting to do an East meets West spin on the concept, badly, and handling established characters like accessories to set up other, more important characters who we've never seen before now, RoboCop 3's plot sounds like someone having an idea for a way their OCs can play around in the RoboCop universe, rather than a story about RoboCop. Partly that's due to the fact that the screenwriters evidently felt that RoboCop's story was simply him finding his humanity, and that was done, so you gotta look elsewhere for things to talk about. Still though, the themes this time around aren't new, they're just bigger, more obvious versions of the themes explored in RoboCop 1 and 2. Another problem, of course, is the change to PG-13, after two movies were pretty hard R-rated flicks. Evidently, it turns out kids liked RoboCop, and studios for some reason think people age backwards? I don't know. But to make the thing that already appeal to children, it was toned down and, by design, or coincidence, dumbed down as well. But it's not all bad. It's RoboCop, a hulking cyborg police officer going around and being badass in the streets of various Texas cities masquerading as Detroit. It has an undeniable charm to it. Even the more ridiculous parts do manage to keep the beloved so bad it's good zone in cinema. At the end of the day, RoboCop 3 is a movie you probably won't want to track down to watch, even if you are a fan of RoboCop. It's cheap, it's stupid, and it doesn't involve RoboCop as much as you would expect. However, it's not a bad choice for fans of cheesy movies. Maybe not the best compliment for a RoboCop flick, but it is what it is, coming in at 2 self-destructing androids, as long as the plot says so, out of 5. Think of it like any other kind of cheese, it goes very well with a wine tasting. Which is probably another way of saying it's a good movie to get a drink for, but anyway, thank you all for watching. I've been Decker Shado. And remember, don't imagine every woman in your life as your ex-wife. That is just wrong on every level.
Where is McDaggett?
Room 212.
Thank you.